So our speaker today is Dr. Khalid Mateen, a nationally respected medical oncologist and a leader in advancing cancer care here at VCU Massey Comprehensive Cancer Center. Dr. Mateen specializes in gastrointestinal cancers and serves as a professor of medicine at the VCU School of Medicine. He also holds a key leadership role as the Associate Director for Global Oncology at Massey, where he helps guide efforts to expand cancer expertise, collaboration, and impact across communities locally and around the world. With years of experience caring for patients and leading clinical research, Dr. Mateen brings a deep understanding of how clinical trials shape the future of cancer treatment. His work reflects a commitment to ensuring that patients have access to the most promising therapies, not someday, but today. And that's the benefit of research reach every community. As we recognize National Cancer Research Month, Dr. Mateen will help us explore why clinical trials are not just an option, but a critical part of the standard of care, and how participation, representation, and awareness can save lives. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Khalid Mateen.
Well, Jarrell, thank you so much for that introduction. And I really just want to applaud the COE department on the invitation and the opportunity to speak on this topic. And special shout out to Charlotte and Caitlin, who've been kind of working with me behind the scenes over the last few weeks in terms of providing some of the slides from the NIH and the questions that are going to be asked down the road. So I want to start out with really showing, as Jarell also mentioned, is where are we now and how we've gotten there. We would not have the outcomes without this curiosity and research to have tomorrow's treatments better than today's. And to give you a snapshot, these are data from cancer statistics published by the ACS, showing that despite us having increasing incidence of cancers in men and women, we are across the board seeing a decline in cancer mortality. And it's a 34% decline over the last 3 decades. And those are impressive numbers. And we haven't just gotten there by a fluke or by just changing diet. It's a combination of factors. We know that we're doing better in terms of screening for cancers and also in the treatment of cancers. And how have we gotten there? It's through being curious, through doing research, and making innovations and having better treatments. That's a trend we need to continue. If we stop doing that, then we stagnate and cancer treatments do not get better. So what is research and what are different types of research that we have? Well, we know there is basic research, and that is typically referred to as bench research that's done in the lab, where really people are trying to seek to understand the fundamental aspects of nature and providing really the foundation for making some of the advances, some of which are new or novel drugs that can help cure or better treat cancers. There is population-based research, which is hugely important, which I know COE is engaged with, really exploring the causes of cancer and cancer trends and factors that affect delivery and outcomes of cancer research. And this is an area that Massey has done really well over the last few years under Dr. Wynn's leadership, really trying to understand what affects our population, what are the problems that people in our area are facing, and how do we better ask and address those questions. Then this clinical research, this is the part that I'm more intimately connected with, where in the clinical space, we are doing studies to really test the efficacy and safety of those drugs. Now, again, it can also be medical devices, other interventions, surgical techniques. So anything that impacts patients in the clinical space in terms of their treatment and to improve their patient care, basically. And finally, there's translational research, which really helps to form the bridge between that basic research happening in the labs and the clinical research happening in the clinics. So it's how do we really better move basic research findings into the clinical and everyday arena. And that's really where interaction between the basic scientists and the clinicians comes in, something we definitely are doing a better job, but need to continue to make strides in. What is a clinical trial? It is a study that tests new ways of preventing, finding, and treating disease. Clinical trials help ensure that newly developed medicines and procedures are safe and effective. And clinical trials bring out discoveries that improve public health and treatment in the future. One additional thing to note is, why do it as a clinical trial? Well, I guess we could just do a new treatment on a bunch of patients, publish the data, and get the answer. The problem is that there can be a lot of other biases that can exist. And really, the best scientific manner in which you do and test new therapies, whether it's a surgical technique or a device or a drug, is really to do it in the confines of a properly conducted clinical trial that really accounts for all those biases and other factors that could be playing a role. Because ultimately, you want to get the right and accurate answer. And also at the same time, you want to be observing for, toxicities and to see if people are tolerating the therapy well. So really, other designs where you just do a bunch of case studies, for example, well, could potentially have biases. And you cannot always determine in the uncontrolled setting whether the intervention really made the difference in the outcome, or was there some other factor that you didn't account for. And it allows you to also look at correlation versus causation. Causation is that something directly causes something, like we know HPV causes cervical cancer, whereas correlation could be things that exist in the environment otherwise, may be associated, but do not directly cause the cancer to happen. The types of clinical trials, it's important to note, can be various kinds. And within our portfolio at Massey, like other comprehensive cancer centers, we don't just focus on drug development, we also focus on all these other aspects too, because they are equally important. Prevention is hugely important. So looking at better ways of preventing, whether it's by altering disease risk or screening modalities, screening trials, testing new ways to detect a disease early, treatment trials. These form a big bulk because once you're diagnosed with cancer, we want to make sure you have the best and latest treatment options available. And we want to make, again, tomorrow's treatments better than the current treatments. And finally, supportive care or quality of life studies, hugely important for cancer patients, because we realize that some of the treatments we do can have an impact that can be detrimental, and we want to assess for that. On the flip side, if there's treatments that are making patients feel better while they're on treatment, that's really important. And this is where there's patient-related outcomes. We'll do surveys, ask patients to give us feedback so we know, are we, improving their quality of life, or are we causing more problems? Why are clinical trials important? Well, hopefully, as I've kind of outlined a little bit earlier, they help researchers and doctors understand how therapies work and which doses are safe and effective. There's multiple layers of clinical trials going from phase 1 to phase 4 potentially, although typically it's phase 1 to phase 3, where really the phase 1 focuses on, finding that key dose, the safe dose to give. And then phase 2 looking at the effectiveness of that therapy. And then phase 3 looks to compare it to a standard established therapy to see if that new therapy is better. They can lead to newer and better treatment standards. They increase our knowledge about disease and related behaviors, or potentially things that may be causing the cancer. And again, they really help to provide the best available medicine for our patients in the clinic. So I want to go through some myths. And the myths are there, for some, part of it because of, sadly, there have been sad moments in our history where we have not historically done clinical trials appropriately, where patients have been taken advantage of. One seminal example of that is the Tuskegee study, and we need to address that. We need to acknowledge that grave mistakes were made, and now that in the future we will not tolerate and never go to a path such as that. And some of those myths come from some of that, and not having enough awareness, or we haven't done a good job of getting the message out. So one of the myths that's out there that I commonly get asked when I see patients in the clinic is, study participants are going to be given a placebo or a sugar pill instead of an effective treatment. And the reality is that is not true. So patients in this day and age, especially with a diagnosis like a cancer diagnosis, you will not be given a placebo in place of a standard therapy. So that is very clear. Now, if both sides of a study are getting a standard therapy, one side, in addition, could be getting a novel agent with the standard treatment. The other side, the other half of the study, will also get the standard therapy, but may get a placebo pill in addition to that standard therapy, but never as a replacement for standard therapy. The second myth, study participation is for people without options. Participation is really for everyone. The only one potential, caveat to that or exception is, patients who go for early phase studies. So if you've kind of exhausted your standard treatment options, all of the FDA approved options have been given, and now you still, you want to try something different, then there's early phase trials where these are newer drugs that are basically coming from the lab off the shelf, and we're doing first in human studies. But the vast majority of studies are going to be applicable to anyone with the correct diagnosis and with the correct eligibility for that study. Third myth, once people begin participation, they have to stay in the studies. Like you sign consent, you're locked into it. Absolutely not true. Uh, Participation in a clinical trial is 100% voluntary, and we make sure from the get-go, we make patients aware of that, and a participant can leave the study at any time. I've had patients, well, for whatever reason, they signed consent, but even before they started the study treatment, they changed their mind, they withdrew. That's absolutely the participant's decision, and they can do that at any point, and it can be during the study as well, and does not impact their care in any way. We continue to take care of them as our patients, whether they go on that study, continue on that study or not. What are the possible benefits? And we'll go through potentially what are the possible, downsides as well. The trial, I think the first component is hugely altruistic, that trial is going to help researchers learn more about cancer and help people in the future. And I know a large majority of our patients are wanting to help other people. Of course, they want to make sure that it's something that benefits them, but ultimately they want to make sure that if the trial can, allow them to get a standard therapy plus something else and it helps things in the future, they're absolutely all for it. You might get access to a treatment that's understudied that may not be available to people outside of trial, and that happens, fairly commonly. That you may get a treatment that could be approved, say, a year or 2 years later, and you were able to get access to that novel agent because you took part in the study. That's happened, countless times over decades and years. The research team will watch you closely, adding an extra layer of care to your health. That's absolutely 100% true. So you're literally getting the clinical team that's following you, and then the research team are calling in you, checking in on you. So it's almost like the Cadillac version of treatment where you're getting all those layers of care. And patients love that, by the way. They're so attached to our clinical team, and then they're attached to our research team as well, and they get the best of that. Though not common, although I will say, yeah, it's not totally uncommon as well. If the treatment being studied is more effective than the standard treatment, you may be among the first to benefit. And that's especially with the phase three studies, that can happen actually somewhat commonly. Is that if you're part of that trial, you get access to a novel agent before it gets approved, and your outcome may end up being better than those patients who didn't go in the study. So all important potential benefits for patients to consider. Um, the risks, those are not trivial, and obviously we make sure patients are aware of this. It's possible that you may not directly benefit from this study, and it may be more we learn things that help us down the road. There may be additional tests that are required because as we're doing clinical trials, we are trying to understand the cancer biology better, and sometimes there may be an additional biopsy, additional blood draws. So, if it's something that's part of the study, we make sure patients are aware, and sometimes that's the reason they don't go on a study. Sometimes some of those additional tests can be optional. And certainly we give patients the option that if they want to contribute and help with the understanding of disease and science, certainly they can do that additional test, but otherwise skip it if it's optional. But it is something to be aware of. They may experience discomfort or unknown side effects. Of course, if there's newer therapies, there's things we're learning along the way. So we may not know, and we're literally finding out as we take care of you. And you may not get the results back because depending on obviously what your stage of cancer is, how long you may have to live, maybe if you potentially pass away before the results are back, you may not directly benefit from that. So those are some of the downsides for folks to be aware of. So I get asked this fairly commonly. Patients will, after they've asked me questions in the clinic, they're like, did I miss anything? What else should I be asking? So this is kind of a rundown of broadly the topics, I try to, help them focus on. Make sure you ask all questions about the trial. What is the treatment I'm getting? What are the different arms in that if it is a randomized study? Make sure you talk about the risks and benefits. So if I do go on the study, what are the potential, benefits of that and what are the downsides? Make sure you ask about your rights. Again, going back to the history, that we have now corrected, we want to make sure patients are aware of their rights in terms of withdrawing from the study potentially, or getting standard care if they choose not to go on the study. Question about costs. That's an important one because obviously, if you are having to do a study, you want to be sure that the cost of the study is not going to be put on you, passed on to you. So, for the vast majority of studies, and I've been doing this now for some 20 plus years, is that if something is part of the standard of care, all standard testing, even if you're in a study, is going to be billed to your insurance and it should be taken care of. And typically, things that are felt to be experimental should ideally be covered by the study. So, but it again is something you want to go through and make sure, is this going to be something additional that I have to take care of, which I don't think we want to ever pass on that burden to any patient. Questions about daily life. How will that affect me? And especially if there's going to be maybe potentially more visits or more tests, that's hours spent. There's costs associated with that, coming in, especially if you're driving from an hour or two away. So all those things have to be factored in. The good thing is a lot of companies now that sponsor studies are getting better at reimbursing patients for that extra time and effort. So realizing that this is time and money. And finally, questions about comparing choices. So, what if I don't go on this study? What's my option? What are you going to treat me with? What do you recommend? That's, I think, always a good question to ask. How do they work? Well, we go through a very rigorous approved plan. We do also, let me just move this up there we go. I can't see that. We have guidelines about who can participate. So our team will make sure that we kind of dot all of our I's, cross all of our T's to make sure we follow the protocol in letter and in spirit. Whenever questions come up, we will reach out to the study sponsor if there's any doubt about if a patient is eligible or ineligible. There is independent oversight. There's committees within VCU and Massey that monitor the progress that's going on with studies. If there are untoward and unexpected events, especially adverse events where people have toxicities, a red flag is raised and potentially studies can be stopped if there's something is noticed, whether it's here or nationally. And that's the oversight that we need. And frankly, I'm glad we have. And there's rules to protect the rights and safety of the participants through the VCU IRB, through an outside IRB, and through all these independent monitoring from within and from without the institution. So this is all the progress that's been made over the decades, given some of the missteps that were taken in the past. Protection of participant health and safety in clinical trials is paramount. That's why, as I mentioned, there are safeguards that protect the health and safety with all the oversight. We really, with all clinical trials, have the moral obligation to protect participants, and we require informed consent, and we treat participants humanely and ethically. This is informed consent. This is the document that really helps establish that patients go through with our team, with us as the provider, going through what the study would entail, what possible side effects, what the steps will be. And it's typically a very, lengthy document, but it covers everything so the patient and family really understand what they're signing up for. And as I mentioned, participants at any point can choose to withdraw from the study. So this is an important slide because I really think this is something that's one of our strengths here at VCU Massey. We really add nationally to the diversity in clinical trials because clinical trials means new therapies are going to get approved, and if they are, they really need to have been tested and shown to be effective and safe in all patients, not just a one or two ethnic background. So we really, I think, I'm proud to say, do a really good job, and we want to continue to do that of having really putting the patients on the study that represents our patient population here within Central Virginia and beyond. So it's important that we get people of gender, race, ethnic origin, weight, all those things, making sure that the trials really represent the patients that they're supposed to represent. How do you find out about clinical trials? There are a lot of different resources out there, but the one really most comprehensive one is clinicaltrials.gov through the NIH, NCI, and that really encapsulates all of the clinical trials that are open throughout the country, including industry studies. So that's a great resource. Those numbers are there as well. But that's commonly when patients and families ask me, that's the resource I tell them if you want to find out about all clinical trials within the whole country. Finally, I just, within the last couple of minutes, wanted to talk about some of the work we do in terms of expanding clinical trials, making them available to patients not just in Richmond, but beyond Richmond, to Central Virginia and beyond. And that is through our NCORE program, which actually that's a typo. It's the NCI's Community Oncology Program, not the National Community Oncology Research Program. And really, it's about expanding clinical trials throughout the country where really the patients are treated. So there are 46 NCORE sites throughout the country, and these sites are able to take those studies that come from the NIH and NCI and really take them out to the people where the patients are in the community. So patients don't have to travel to the big centers in the major cities. So it really provides access to rural communities, minority communities, patients who otherwise would not have access to clinical trials. And we also would be at a loss too because we would not learn from studying and giving these novel therapies to these patients. This is for our state. Within Virginia, these are our NCORE affiliates throughout the state. We're right there in the center with the Massey logo. But as you can see, it really allows us to take out the clinical trials to the people, which is what, really helps to power our diverse accrual that we put on clinical trials here at Massey. This just gives you an idea of the kind of menu that's available. This is not the menu for patients at Massey. This is the menu available for patients throughout the state. So if you're in Lynchburg, if you're in Winchester, if you're in South Hill, your site potentially has access to all of these studies in all of these different tumor types, which means you do not have to go far. You can access them right there in your backyard through your local oncologist, which is something we're really proud of. This slide just briefly gives you an idea of what our vision is internally, what we like to do within our different disease working groups, depending on what tumor type we treat, is we really like to have a clinical trial option available for whatever diagnosis you come to us with and whatever stage you have. So neoadjuvant refers to patients getting chemo or treatment before surgery. Adjuvant is post-surgery. And then metastatic first lines and metastatic progressive is if you have cancer that's recurred or spread. So giving you options for whatever scenario you may present us to, because that's how we're going to make tomorrow's treatments better. So really, I just want to conclude with these thoughts. So, oops, let me go back. Clinical trials continue to improve cancer treatment and give patients the opportunity to access tomorrow's treatments today. Clinical trials should not and do not put patients on substandard treatment. I think that's an important thing for us to know that no placebo by itself. Over 70% of our cancer patients are in the country are treated out in the community. That's why we need the program like the NCORE program to make sure the clinical trials are out there and patients have access. We need to work to continue to remove barriers to accrual and to access. There are a lot. They can be at the physician level, they can be at the institutional level, they can be at the patient level. So we need to continue to work as a community to make sure people understand what these are for and that we have buy-in from all the stakeholders. Accrual to trials needs to be representative of the patients that we see, and so we need to make sure we talk to all patients of all walks of life. And in my mind, cancer clinical trials are a key part of the standard of care. So if you're not providing clinical trials at your site, you're really missing out on a very key part. And just wanted to kind of thank you for the invitation and for all of you attending today and the attention. This is not one or two people's job. This is a whole team. It takes a village, and we have amazing people in our clinical trial office and at COE who really do. They're really the engine for what we do. And then our wonderful nurses and other staff in the clinical areas. And finally, this is dedicated to our amazing patients for whom we want to make, treatments better and whose bravery continues to inspire us. So appreciate your attention. Happy to take any questions.
Phenomenal. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Dr. Mateen. That was phenomenal. And so the chat is already jumping with questions for you, so you got the community hot. So firstly, I want to start off with this one and invite this individual because I think she has a little bit of a unique question. So Christy Fields, if you don't mind coming off of mute, I saw you ask the question in the chat. If you would like the opportunity, I would love to give you opportunity to ask Dr. Mateen directly.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
My
Mhm.
question is, I'm interested in joining a clinical trials team. Is there anywhere like in Suffolk that's linked to you guys? I
Mhm.
saw a start by it, but I basically want to know how do I implement that at my site?
Yeah, so great question. So one of our sites, one of our affiliate sites in the Suffolk area is the Peninsula Cancer Institute. So they're one of our NCORE affiliates. So definitely, if that's something you wanted to reach out to the staff, or if you wanted to reach out to our team here, we could help make the connection, and in whatever way. But yeah, that's one of our affiliates right there, the star that you saw.
All right. Next, Charlotte, stop me if I'm running over, please. You know how you do me. I want to get one more question. I think this one is really interesting, specifically considering some of the trials that are around today. Um, the question is from Dr. Williams, and he would like to know under what condition or conditions would a person not receive test results? I feel like while on a clinical trial.
Yeah, so it, the only scenario potentially can be if biopsies are being collected, with the idea that we're not going to utilize the information now and we're storing what's called tissue banking. Because as we sometimes understand the biology of the cancer, we discover things later. So it may happen 2 years later, 3 years later. So sometimes you may have an additional test done, like an additional biopsy or blood draw, and there won't be any results from it, or may not be results from it because we really don't know what to look for right now, but we're storing it with the idea that as we better understand things in due time, then we will take a look at that sample and try to get answers.
Can I follow that question? Because I think, we've got a lot of people on the call probably been touched by the Vanguard study.
Mhm.
And that Vanguard study, there are going to be folks who aren't going to get any results back. So would you mind reflecting on that? Because that may be influencing this question.
Yeah, no, and I think that's exactly what this is about is in terms of, where and correct me, Dr. Rhodes, if I'm wrong. I think with the Vanguard you're doing that's more looking at kind of circulating tumor DNA for patients.
Yeah, it's the multi-cancer detection test. And so some people will get randomized to have your blood drawn, but not get any results back.
Right. And I think part of that goes to that as we're trying to do some of these studies, we want to have that kind of comparison arm. And it's about collecting the data at that point. And then once we have the results from the study, then I think potentially they'll be open to looking at some of that data and getting back. But there is with some of these studies where we're trying to understand the utility of tests, we're trying to really figure out what the right way to do it is.
I have a
Um,
question. I
mhm.
put in the chat. My mom had pain on her side in the back. Is that a sign of cancer? Because I know my father had problem with some blood clots. I don't know if that connected with cancer because cancer runs in my family.
Yeah, so that's something you definitely want to kind of get addressed with your local provider. So make sure whoever is having that symptom is checked out. And really, the only way to answer that would be to have the patient evaluated and get checked out.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And if you need some assistance with getting connected to primary care or that individual needs any cancer screenings, please feel to reach out to your community outreach and engagement team here at the VCU Massey Comprehensive Cancer Center. You can reach out to us at engagemassey@vcu.edu, and we do have a phone number as well that somebody can drop in the chat. Okay, you guys, I know the chat is getting hotter with question and answer. I love it. I love it. I love it. But I have some more jam-packed surprises for you, and I promise you I'm gonna bring Q&A back one more time for you. So if you don't mind, keep dropping the questions. We love them. We love them. But we're going to keep the program moving. So with that, I'm going to introduce one of my lovely colleagues, Caitlin Schifano. Many of you know her. Many of you love her. I love her personally more. I don't think you love her more than me. It's just coming to talk to you some more about some things we're offering here at COE.
Yeah, COE just wants to make you aware of a new activity that we'll be having on the regular, and it's called Breaking News Updates from Cancer Researchers. Our first one is going to take place next month on May 12th from 6:30 to 7:30. And the topic is going to be how do neighborhoods influence breast cancer outcomes? So we'll be joined by Dr. Joseph Boyle. So the whole point of this series is to be similar to the Cancer Forum, but really getting into the research. So you're hearing directly from the research about the latest scientific discoveries, and then also really having a conversation about why this research matters to you specifically, learn how you can partner with the researchers, and also give your opinions on what the next steps should be. So we encourage you to join, scan that QR code to register, and I'll drop the link in the chat. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Caitlin. And then following that, I have the pleasure of introducing another one of my lovely colleagues, Michael Gatsby. Many of you know him, many of you love him. He's a community transformer. Thank you. Come on, Michael.
Good afternoon, everyone. As part of Massey's Seed to Harvest Community Grant Initiative, the Cultivate Award is specifically designed as our capacity building award. But whether or not your organization is a community grant recipient, to make sure that training for research preparation is available to all the communities Massey serves, we welcome you to participate in the Cultivate learning sessions beginning this June. For organizations that are interested in being trained to participate in research, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen right now to register for one of two informational sessions that we'll be hosting on May 15th and 19th to learn more. You can also call or email us for additional details. We hope to see you there.
Thank you, Michael. And so I promised you guys I will open it back up. And as you see, I am a man of my word. And so with that, before we move back to Dr. Mateen, I want to give anybody the chance to ask Caitlin or Michael any questions that they may have about anything that they brought up, if you have those.
I want to know if they have that on the 12th, they're gonna send an email stating about the Zoom meeting on the 12th of May.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have that link in the follow-up email to this call, and we'll make sure that it's available. So please, put the link in the chat. I'll put it in one more time, and then just let me know if you have any other questions.
Absolutely. And you guys, please take advantage of that Cultivate session, whether you're a grant recipient or not. It's going to be a lot of great information going on. And again, if you really like the forum, you like the setup of this, why would you not want to catch the research version of that? Catch the cutting edge, be on the cutting edge, and really, again, connect some more with the COE. Um, okay. So if y'all have questions, I'll have y'all. Okay, here we go. From Ahmed asks, for those who want to get involved in research assistant work, are there any volunteer opportunities available? Okay, you want to take that? So I'll start on my end. There are volunteer opportunities. Won't say towards necessarily get towards specifically research, but I will say that you can get the opportunity to work out in the community with the community outreach and engagement team with the volunteer program. And I think there are some other opportunities. Caitlin or Michael, would y'all like to speak towards that? No, it's okay.
Yeah, at Massey, all of our research is informed by community partners and members. So we want you to be as involved as you want to be. So we want to see you really hand in hand with researchers, helping shape the research questions whenever possible. Our newsletter is a great way to find opportunities such as this. And we're working on finding more direct ways for people who want hands-on experiences with research teams.
Thank you. All right. And so if you have any more questions for Michael and Caitlin, you can drop those in the chat, but I do want to get back to some of those that were already answered in the chat. So, Dr. Mateen, Ruby Carter would like to know, how do you measure if the clinical trial is working, or is a change in the patient's lifestyle help to change their outcome?
Yeah, so that's where really collecting the data over time comes in. And there are often trials that'll have an interim analysis built into, like halfway through at a certain point, because sometimes we don't want to wait until the end of a study and hundreds of patients have gone it. If say a treatment is not working, or if it's working really well, either way, we want to have ways of assessing that. And as we're collecting the data that's being analyzed in terms of patient-reported outcomes, that can be evaluated too. But ultimately, that's what boils down to analyzing the data at the end of the study for the most part, looking to see are the patients on the said innovative treatment, are they living longer? Are we getting better responses? What is the side effect profile? So all that data is constantly being collected by our clinical trial office staff, and that data is being analyzed by the sponsor.
Thank you so much for that response. Hope that answered your question. And then next, sorry, you guys, I have to do this. I'm going to shout out the Con and VCU Health Hub watch party that's going on right now. I see your hand is up. I've seen the question. So if you want to, I want to give y'all the opportunity to come off mute and actually ask your questions. And I want to say thank you to everybody that's there at that watch party. So go ahead, y'all.
Dr. Matson, that was a great presentation. Thank you. I wanted you to know that some of the members that are with me today are lay health promoters. So we're involved in community health and health education. And so if we had this information on our table, help us learn how to make a resident care about participating in the clinical trial. I mean, I know we talked about the benefits but do you have any data that says the why, like why they chose to participate in this clinical trial? Was it because of someone in their family? So what is that why? Because I think we need so to feel comfortable being at our tables and encouraging our public to consider clinical trials.
Great. That's a great question. First of all, I appreciate the work that you all do by talking to folks in the community and raising awareness, because I think that is probably one of the most key elements of making sure that people understand, because there are misconceptions out there, as I mentioned, because of historical context and mistrust, and also because there sadly is a lot of misinformation out there on the internet and otherwise too. So thank you for the work you do. I think there are certain factors we do know, and what in terms of data that's been collected to some of the work that we've done with the NIH as well, is it often can be a function of that interaction that's held between the patient and their physician, say their oncologist or part of their team. A lot of the feedback we get from patients, not just in Virginia, but even nationally, is that sometimes patients don't even have a clinical trial presented to them. And we know historically that has been more of an issue when talking to minority patients as well. So clearly, we have work to do on our end with our colleagues here amongst the cancer center. So we continue to work with the community sites that we work with to educate their teams about the benefit of clinical trials. And we also know that patients are more likely to go on a clinical trial when their physician is enthusiastic about the study as well and spends time explaining the study. But on your end, what I would say is encourage patients to ask about it, advocate for themselves, and ask, is there a clinical trial for me? Because really, in this day and age, for a cancer diagnosis, if they don't have it, they should advocate for themselves and get a second opinion. Come to a center where there are clinical trials. So I think once we try from both ends to make more of that dialogue happen, where physicians spend time with everyone about and explain clinical trials, and patients advocate for themselves and make sure they are told what clinical trials are available, and if not, they go somewhere else for a second opinion, or utilize the resources that we outlined earlier to find out about clinical trials that are close to them.
Perfect. Okay. And then, yes, thanks, Dr. Team. Okay. Yes. And then I want to do one last one because the Con and VCU Health Watch Party had a lot of hot stuff going on. Invite me out. I want to make it a live session. So we'll make this the last question and then we'll continue on. And then, Charlotte, if you don't mind, while we're doing this, if you can drop the evaluation questions in the chat, that would actually be a big help as well so we can keep this ball moving. So they asked the question about, I think this is really important because people actually do wonder about this. If a person is in a research study, is their insurance billed? Also, do clinical trials typically include payment/incentives for participation?
Yeah, so yeah, two questions. So the first one, I think I alluded to in my presentation, is that things that are felt to be part of the standard of care. So if there's standard CT scans, standard blood work, standard chemotherapy. So I'm talking specifically about a chemotherapy trial here. Those will be billed to insurance because you'd be getting those anyway. Anything additional, so that could mean an additional biopsy or an additional procedure, say an endoscopy or additional treatment, those typically would be covered by the study. So it's whatever's not standard, studies will typically cover. If there are some issues there, there's a gray area. That's when we sometimes have to figure out ways. The cancer center is sometimes able to provide support for some of those things that are not standard, but typically that's how it works. Regarding incentives, um, it becomes a little bit of a tricky point because you don't want, the way the IRB and regulatory authorities see it, we don't want to necessarily incentivize going on a clinical trial because that can be perceived, kind of in some ways, somewhat of coercion. But we do realize that if there are additional things that patients have to do, if there's travel, a lot of travel, or if they have to say stay overnight for additional testing, some studies will allow compensation for those kind of additional things or travel miles and things like that. Or if there's an extra procedure you have to do or spend time on, say, a questionnaire, you may get a gift card for that extra time. So it's a balance. You don't want to necessarily incentivize being going on a trial for those reasons. That is, we don't want to make it seem like there's in some way a final financial coercion to do it. But at the same time, if there is, a lot of time being spent or additional things being done, there is sometimes some financial compensation that can be provided. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. It absolutely did. And I want to thank you so much, Dr. Mateen, for your time today. If your questions did not get answered, no worries. We're going to catch them on the back end and actually send them those questions. But we got through quite a bit today. So again, I just want to say thank you again for your time, Dr. Mateen. If you've just been so engaged, you got questions, you got comments, you have concerns, you really want to talk to the Office of Community Engagement, we got two ways you can reach us. So you can reach us through engage, MASSEY, at vcu.edu or by phone at 804-628-0896. Please go ahead and get that survey done. And then, are you or someone you love eligible for screening? Get support from the Massey COE. So we still do have our three cancer screening eligibility questionnaires. So we have one for prostate cancer, lung, and colorectal. Again, scan those if you haven't already. Oh, and Dr. Rose made a good point. If you're in the Williamsburg or Gloucester area, you may see our local colorectal cancer advocates, bus shelters, or billboards, or etc. Connect with us. If you need resources in general, scan the COE link tree to the left. If you want our support at an event or you want materials, scan the request for our mass support link in the middle. If you would love to volunteer, you want to get involved, you've been so galvanized, you're ready to transform and connect with the community, please scan the link to the right to volunteer. Save the date for the Massey Community Cancer Forum that happens on the what? Fourth Tuesdays of every month. Make sure you tell a friend and bring a friend next time. We got something exciting for you, so it's so nice I'm hiding it from you. So the topic is coming soon. So that means you just have to keep your eye on the email and the social media to see what that's going to be. But that's going to happen on May 26th, 2026 from 1 to 2 p.m. Scan the register, wait for the topic, catch the topic, and beat me there. Thank you so much for your attendance, and thank you so much for connecting with us. This has been another installment of the Massey Community Cancer Forum.